gorgeous, welcome back to another Sims 4 speed building video. I hope you're all doing well. So today we're back building for my save file, and this is going to be a family house for another family that was first introduced in The Sims 3. I think I mentioned this before. I had to kind of pick and choose which families I'm going to build a house for, families that were introduced in The Sims 3, that is. I do have houses for all the Sunset Valley Sims 2 families by now, but I also want to introduce a couple of Sims 3 families, but because that was a larger open world, there were too many families, so I unfortunately have to pick and choose. But I might end up making a bunch of the Sims 3 families to have them at least live in the family library, so that when you're playing with this save file and your sim goes out somewhere, they might still run into these classic Sims 3 townies. But I have not decided that yet, because it's going to be a lot of work making all of these sims. So yeah, just to let you guys know, you know, the backstory for this house. This is the house where Sw0rd and Blair Wainwright are going to live. Now, if you don't know the Sims, they used to live in Sunset Valley in, like, I believe it's like a rather large house, and they live with a bunch of roommates, like 5 or 6 different roommates. And I believe the way that the Sims team set up their storyline is that Sw0rd and Blair Wainwright, they used to be like exes of each other, but they changed it in the end, so they're not anymore. However, if you are playing with, you know, a brand new Sunset Valley save file, and you just kind of let the game run its course with story progression on, they might often end up you know, dating together. So I do think that's quite an interesting storyline, and I definitely wanted these Sims to end up as a couple. So believe it or not, Sw0rd was actually, for me, is one of the most iconic townies in The Sims 3, because I remember, I think this was like the very first time I ever picked up and played The Sims 3. I had my sim just go out into the park, and she ran into Sw0rd. And I was so confused with his name, because if you're not aware, the way that Sw0rd is spelled, it's like very sort of, you know, the zeros MSN-esque. So Cyclone is spelled, the O is a 0 and the E is a 3. And then his last name Sword, the O is a 0. So the first time I actually ran into Cyclone, I was convinced like it must have been some kind of a glitch. I was like, what's going on here? Like, why does this guy have such a strange name? But yeah, you know, that was my first sort of memory of Sw0rd. And when I wanted to, you know, build him a house, I kind of did some research into his backstory, and I found out that he lives together, you know, in this large house with all these roommates, and that he actually has like a potential romance going on with one of the other Sims, Blair Wainwright. So yeah, that's what I wanted to roll with for my save file. And as you guys might be aware, my save file is set approximately 40 to 50 years after the events of The Sims 3. So let's catch up their storyline. They are elders in my save file, unfortunately, but I like the idea of them having kids later in life. So they're still living together with their 2 children who are teenagers. I imagine both of these Sims were quite career driven. I think Blair, she in The Sims 3, she worked in law enforcement, so I'm also going to put her like in the police career or the law enforcement career. I'm not sure how it's called in The Sims 4. That came with the Get to Work expansion pack. And Sw0rd, he originally worked, I believe, in the journalism career. I think I'm going to have him work as a gamer, just because I feel like, you know, that just suits his character, the way that he looks, you know, the kind of name that he chose to go by. I think that would be very interesting. And I also quite like the idea of perhaps he used to be like quite a well-known streamer or something, and he might even have some fame points still. from that. So that's the storyline that I like to go with. So these Sims have been very career driven their entire lives, but eventually, you know, they did want to start a family, but they started it relatively late in life, which is why they're now living with two teens, you know, in their 60s or 70s even. So yeah, I hope you guys like that idea. About these teenagers, I kind of like the idea of them being twin daughters, but they don't have a very good relationship to one another. If you've been following me for a while, you know I always like to kind of incorporate some kind of drama in my storylines. So these two twins, they're quite different from one another, and I like the idea of one of the twins being like the quote-unquote perfect child. She does really well in school, gets really high grades, is really successful. She's very social, like she has a bunch of friends and people always immediately like her no matter where she goes. And then the other Sim, she's a bit slower, she's a bit of a slower learner, maybe she's like just like a C student or something, and she doesn't have a bunch of friends, and she has, you know, some difficulties maybe trying to make new friends. She's a bit more of a loner perhaps. And I don't want to call any of them like the better child, because I do imagine like maybe like the smarter teen to be kind of a mean girl, you know, like a little bit Regina George style. And then, you know, the other, you know, actually being like a good Sim, just having a heart of gold, but just, you know, not the best communicator, not the most sociable person, but definitely with a heart of gold. So that's kind of the, you know, the different characters that I had in mind to kind of set up some more drama in the storyline. And I quite like the idea of like the slower child, just to give her a name, because I did not come up with names yet. But if you have any suggestions, let me know. She kind of looks up to her sister. She definitely feels sort of inferior to her sister, and she wishes for her sister to like spend more time with her or be more friendly with her. However, like the smarter sister, she does not want to spend time with her like slower sister at all, because she's a bit embarrassed. I feel like she definitely cares a lot about status and like being popular, and like maybe she's even a little bit of a bully, you know. So I would guess that kind of creates a difficult family dynamic between these two Sims, which is something that we can explore and play around with since the Sims 4 Going Together expansion pack came out. So yeah, I think that is quite an interesting storyline to go with for these two teens. So basically, you guys, that is the storyline I have in mind for these two Sims. So it's Sw0rd, who is a famous ex-streamer, like professional gamer, and Blair Wainwright, who is a police officer. They're both elders, probably both pensioned. They had children later in life, two teens who do not get along, who are quite different from one another. So that, I think it's an interesting household. And also because they are from, you know, a larger household in The Sims 3 with lots of roomies, I do want to create their roomies. I might not be able to create all the Sims 3 families, but I definitely do want to create their ex-roommates, and, you know, just place them in the family library again. So when you know, they might go out or something, they might run into, you know, their friends from before, or they can like throw a party with like a heap of their like their old friends, so to speak. I think that would be cute. So, and then in terms of this house, I guess the style of this house is definitely a bit more modern than what I usually build. It's more of a sort of typical suburban, like American house, but it is built on this street of Victorian houses. So I definitely wanted to include a bunch of detailing to make it blend into the street a lot better. So I used the same fence work, for example, and just a bunch of you know, detailing that make this house look like it could be a bit older than it is. But I definitely think that on this street, this is one of the newer houses, because all the other houses are very like obviously in a Victorian style, if that makes sense. So yeah, and actually this house, I literally copied it from a floor plan that I saw on Pinterest, which is why you saw me starting out with a floor plan so quickly. Usually I just first build the exterior and then start figuring out the floor plan once the exterior is finished. But this time I actually had like both a picture of a facade as well as a floor plan, and I just kind of wanted to replicate it to the best of my abilities, because I felt like that house would really suit this family. And also that's of course always a building tip, especially if you're not very experienced or confident, or you just don't feel super inspired, to just look up houses like on Pinterest or Google Images or whatever, and just try and replicate something to, you know, to come up with ideas for later on. And, you know, I don't often like completely like rip off a real life build, but I think it's fine. Like, you're always going to have to change up a couple of things, but because there's, you know, when you're building in The Sims, like the scale is always going to be slightly off. So you're gonna have to take some, you know, creative liberties and stuff like that. So here we are building the bathroom, like the master bathroom. It's quite a large space. Again, I think that's because, you know, the scale of the floor plan wasn't quite right, but I quite liked it. I mean, taking into account that these Sims are elders, you know, when you're an elder, it might not be great having to deal with a very small bathroom, or maybe having to shower, for example, in like a shower tub combo. It's just dangerous. Like, there's a lot of slipping danger, and I know it's The Sims, so, you know, Sims don't really slip or trip at all. But I think if this was real life, it would definitely make a lot more sense to have a large bathroom, or like a spacious bathroom for, you know, your elders. And this is one of the teens' bedrooms. Apologies, this is like the popular girls' bedroom, right? So this is also like the slightly larger bedroom. The other one is somewhat smaller. I think because this girl, she's a bit more manipulative. She might have convinced her parents or even like her sister to kind of give her the larger bedroom. I don't imagine that these girls have like any of them have a bad relationship to their parents. They just have a poor relationship to each other. But I guess that their parents love both their children dearly, so that's not really the issue. I also quite like the idea of maybe like this child that I'm building the bedroom for take more after her mother, and then the other child takes more after her father, who is like more of a gamer and also perhaps a bit of an antisocial person. So yeah, that's kind of the idea that I had in mind for these Sims. And we'll soon move on to the other bedroom. So as you can see, it's a lot smaller. There's not very big windows. I don't think this would be a very nice, you know, bedroom to have. I mean, on the other hand, like, it has everything that this scene could possibly need. It's not like she you know, she's not being spoiled as much as the other one. I think they're both being treated equally, but it happens, you know, it happens a lot when families buy a house, and not every bedroom is going to be the same size, and you're going to have to make up your mind who is going to stay in which bedroom. And in this case, this kid ended up unfortunately in the smaller room. But yeah, I guess that's quite realistic as well. So yeah, I think actually, to be honest, you guys, I think we're near the end of this speed building video. I'm just working on the final details, putting together this bedroom, but you will see it in the screenshots as well. So I think I'm just going to leave this voiceover right here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know by leaving a like or a comment, or feel free to subscribe. And I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!